Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, call Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem HaRachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutation to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And the title of this video is going to be, Edom is lifted up in pride for the last times. Alright. And I was watching this video right here earlier this morning. This is a video from the Elder Karatazar from the GMS Vegas camp. All right, GMS Vegas 144 Reloaded. Subscribe and be edified. All right, and I see the title of his video, "The Hammer of the Earth Coming for Everything, Leading to His Own Isolation and Downfall." All right, you can check that video out and be edified. But as you can pretty much see from this screen right here, from his video, an article that he's going into from people.com, and as you can pretty much see was written on the screen. Okay, Trump threatens to come for Cuba, Colombia, Greenland, Iran, and Mexico next after saying, quote, "Nobody can stop us." All right, and then it says underneath it, quote, "There's nobody that has the capability that we do," the president said after U.S. troops captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Okay, so pretty much Trump and his administration, all right, in the military, all right, coming off of the heels of the capturing, okay, or rather kidnapping of former President Maduro of Venezuela, okay, kidnapping him in the middle of the night along with his wife, okay, and bringing him over here to the United States. Trump and his administration, and these Edomites, across the board, are puffing themselves up once again throughout the earth, okay, showing forth their pomp, as the scripture speaks about, their stout-heartedness, right, boasting and flexing in the sword, okay, flexing themselves against these different nations throughout the earth, okay, and especially primarily that of China and Russia and Iran, okay, and these, all these things just go to show, all right, Esau, Edom, doing what he does best and doing what he's always been doing, okay, waging war, going throughout the four corners of the earth, all right, coming down with the sword, all right, and using lies and false narratives, okay, to justify coming with the sword and doing wickedness and violence throughout the earth. And then after he's done doing, doing his wickedness, he puffs himself up. Okay, he sticks his chest out in pride. Okay, boasting himself throughout the earth and challenging anybody to to basically do something against him and take him down. Okay, and it all speaks to the pride of Esau, Edom. Okay, in the earth, especially in these latter days. Okay, this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, and I'll start at verse 10. It says, "But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not." Okay, yeah, because that's ultimately why Esau, Edom, is stuck up in his pride so much in these latter days at an all-time high. Because what? He knows that he has but a short time left. Okay, he knows that the spirit of the Lord Yahweh Shemashah is exposing him and his wicked agenda and his wicked deeds throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, and especially most certainly the small hats that pretty much have their hands in the pockets are the backs of America. Okay, the small hats using Trump and using Babylon the Great America to pretty much do his bidding throughout the four corners of the earth. All right. And it's all going to ultimately, when it's all said and done, it's going to lead to, all right, as the Elder Karatazar titled this video, "The Hammer of the Earth," all right, Babylon the Great, coming for everything, leading to his own isolation and downfall. Okay, because all these things that America, Babylon the Great, is doing throughout the four corners of the earth, constantly waging war and starting conflicts throughout the earth, is all going to lead to America being isolated. Okay, even as allies, NATO and EU allies, pretty much separating themselves from America, okay, was that's prophetic, okay, especially, when America, all right, under the Trump administration, seeks to, make a move on Greenland, okay, in which I've been seeing brothers have been doing videos over the past couple of days showing that, NATO has pretty much been, telling America, look, pretty much if you go after Greenland, then pretty much NATO is done with, okay, and that's going to lead to a lot of these NATO and EU countries, okay, officially turning against America and ultimately joining with America's enemies, by the likes of Russia, China, Iran, okay, and of course we all know that that's prophecy at the end of the day. Revelation the 17th chapter, the beast shall hate the whore, okay, the beast, all right, the NATO and the EU countries hating the whore, Babylon the Great America, okay, and aiding in the destruction of this place by way of fire, all right, thermonuclear fire, okay. So this is where Esau, Edom's pride is getting ready to get him to in these outer days. Isolation, okay, then ultimately destruction, all right. And as the scriptures even speaks about in the book of Proverbs, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall, okay. So as we see America under the Trump administration, okay, puffing themselves up in these outer days, especially on the heels of what took place down there in Venezuela with the capturing of their president. All these things let us, the hopeful elect, know that that the days of Babylon the Great America are pretty much over with. Okay, there's just only a few prophecies left. Okay, of course the MOTB, Esau coming down, great wrath, persecution, right? AI, pseudoscience. Okay, then soon after that, World War III. Okay, World War III in the Middle East. All right, which is going to turn nuclear, and then Yahushua is going to come back and deliver us, the hopeful elect. All right, but Jeremiah 49 and verse 11, it says, "Leave thy fatherless children; I will prepare, Slakia, I will preserve them alive, and let thy widows trust in me." Verse 12, "For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, they whose judgment was not to drink of the cup have assuredly drunken. And art thou he that shall altogether go unpunished? Thou shalt not go unpunished, but thou shalt surely drink of it." Yeah, because the way these Edomites, especially under the Trump administration, all right, and as well the small hats, are moving things out of days, all right, as of 2026, okay, they're really thinking in their minds that they're not going to be punished for all the evils and the iniquities that they've done throughout the four corners of the earth, especially all the evils that they've done against the Lord's people, okay, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the Israelites, all right, and that speaks to how much pride that these Edomites are moving in these outer days, okay, really and truly thinking that they're just going to continue going throughout the earth, all right, waging war, overthrowing governments, deriding strongholds, as it speaks of in Habakkuk, the first chapter, okay. And then ultimately set up a one world digital system, a digital Tower of Babel system, where they're going to enslave all humanity via technology, AI, micro CIPs, which is the MOTB, and pretty much put themselves as God on the earth forever and ever and ever. Okay, thinking that they're not going to be punished, eventually face consequences and judgments, all right, and repercussions for their actions, all right. And these devils, showing you how far left their mindset is. Even when you read in the book of Psalms, the 50th chapter, okay, that they in their minds, and a part of their minds, they think that Yahweh Shema Shai is with all the evils and the wickedness that they're doing, okay, which in a sense the Lord is, all right, for the of course for the purpose of prophecy being fulfilled, the Lord is, letting these devils fulfill their wickedness, all right, and fulfill their course on the earth as being the devil and being the wicked, until the Most High sends His begotten Son Yahweh Shai back to take them down. Okay, even as it speaks of in 2 Thessalonians the 2nd chapter, only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way, right? And that's what's getting ready to be able to happen to Esau, Edom. Okay, the Lord's getting ready to take him away via His right hand, Yahweh Shai. But it says, verse 13. Jeremiah 49 and 13, "For I have sworn by myself, saith the Lord Yahweh, that Bozrah shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. Okay, and Bozrah prophetically symbolizes America. Okay, Babylon the Great, America. Because Bozrah, all right, when you go into the history of Bozrah in ancient times, Bozrah was the ancient capital of the land of Israel. Okay, the ancient capital of the land of Israel, the chief hub of Esau, Edom back in ancient times. Well, here in these latter days, America, okay, America, Babylon the Great, represents the chief hub of Esau, Edom, and the earth in these latter days. Okay, so America is likened to Bozrah prophetically. Okay, whereas it said again, Jeremiah 49:13, for I have sworn by myself, saith the Lord, that Bozrah shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. And he's showing you that this Bozrah right here is not talking about the actual ancient land of Bozrah, because you notice it, as it said at the latter part of verse 13, and all the cities thereof shall be waste. Now Bozrah itself in ancient Edom was a city itself. Okay, so why does it liken Bozrah to having multiple cities according to this verse that we just read right here? Because it's not talking about the actual physical land of Bozrah, or the actual physical land of Edom. All right, is likening Bozrah to a future end time rulership in these outer days, which is America, Babylon the Great. Okay, the modern day spiritual Bozrah. All right, and also as you read in Isaiah the 34th chapter, the Lord said that He's going to make a sacrifice in Bozrah. Okay, to bring judgment upon Esau, Edom, Idumea. All right, and it says, verse 14, Jeremiah 49:14, I have heard a rumor from the Lord Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent unto the heathen, saying, gather ye together and come up against her, and come against her, and rise up to the battle. Verse 15, for lo, I will make thee small among the heathen, and despised among men. You see that? Verses 14 and 15 right here is literally the first two verses that you read of in the book of Obadiah. Okay, it literally says the same thing. Okay, point by point by point. All right, and that's what we see going on these outer days. These heathen nations, all right, rising up in battle against Esau, Edom, primarily here in America, Babylon the Great, as well as rising up in battle against the small hats, which America and the small hats, okay, are pretty much linked, together, tight, linked tight together, all right, partners in crime, so to speak, right? And again, that's what we're seeing going on these outer days. These heathen nations rising up in battle against the West, against America, and against the small hats, right? Ramping up their military power, ramping up their nuclear arsenal. Okay, countries like Iran, North Korea, and of course Russia and China, right? Along with Syria, India, Pakistan, the BRICS nations, all right? And many of these other smaller nations are gearing up in war in these outer days to rise up in battle against Esau, Edom. All right. And as it said in verse 15 again, for lo, I will make thee small among the heathen, and despised among men. All right. And when you look up this word small, okay, small among the heathen, this word small is Strong's H6996, Quatan, and it means young, small, insignificant, unimportant. All right, and that's how the world is looking at America, ran by Esau, Edom in these outer days. Okay, insignificant, unimportant, because what? All these nations are pretty much fed up with Esau, Edom, and fed up with the West. All right, and making moves to go outside the dollar, forming their own, so-called beast structure, so to speak. The BRICS nations. All right, these different oil-rich countries, all right, pretty much finding ways to sell their oil outside of the dollar. Okay, which Venezuela is an example of that in recent years. Okay, because if you go back a few years ago under the Biden administration, Venezuela pretty much opted out of selling their oil reserves in U.S. dollars. Okay, and then here we see just a few years later, all right, as of this year, January 2026, we see Trump, well, really starting late last year in 2025, coming into 2026, we've seen Trump doing what? Okay, over these recent weeks, bombing Venezuela. Okay, under the false guise that they're bringing drugs to America, right? Their president is a drug dealer, okay, a tyrant, all right, corrupt, rubbing elbows with so-called terrorist organizations, which, to a certain extent, a lot of those things may be true, okay, but we know that ultimately at the end of the day, the number one drug dealer in T areas throughout the earth is Esau Edom, okay. Blowing up boats coming from Venezuela, accusing them of having drugs on a boat, right? With no due process, no examination of those boats, just indiscriminately bombing them, right? And this Trump administration has used that whole guise of drug dealing, this and the third, to justify bombing them, okay? And as we've been seeing over these past couple of days, the whole world is condemning, okay, what Trump did down there in Venezuela with capturing their president, this and things like that. All right, so ultimately it all speaks to what? Esau Edom being made small among the heathen and despised among men, which is why, okay, these heathen nations are rising up in battle against Esau. All right, it says, verse 16, thy terribleness hath deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, that holdest the height of the hill, though thou shouldest make thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, said the Lord Yahweh. And again, when you read the book of Obadiah, the first 3 or 4 verses, it literally speaks to these same exact points. Okay, the pride of Esau's heart, him dwelling in the cliffs of the rock, all right, exalting himself as the eagle, okay. And that's, again, speaks to Esau Edom, the so-called white man. All right. And the so-called white man is doing all these things in the earth in his outer days down to a T. Okay. His terribleness, right? Going throughout the four corners of the earth, colonizing, rape, robbery, murdering, stealing resources, overthrowing governments, right? Setting up puppet leaders to do his bidding, right? The pride of his heart, okay? Exalting himself as the eagle. All right, and let's look up this word pride. The word pride is Strong's H2087. It's Zadawan, and it means pride, insolence, presumptuousness, okay, arrogance. All right, presumptuousness means from Oxford Dictionary of English, says of a person or their behavior failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate. Yeah, a person in their behavior failing to observe the limits of what's permitted, basically permitted to them. Basically a person who's doing too damn much and going too far. All right. And that's what Esau Edom does. Okay, takes his pride and his wickedness too damn far, okay, doing too much, all right, too much rebellion against Yahweh Shai, all this witchcraft and sorcery, okay, having no chill throughout the four corners of the earth, all right, just going with this wickedness, eventually until somebody basically takes him down, and that's going to be Yahweh Shai, all right. Says insolence. Let's look up insolence. Okay, from Oxford Dictionary of English, insolence means rude and disrespectful behavior. Okay, rude and disrespectful behavior. All right, and tell me that none of these things, okay, describe the so-called white man that's in the earth to this very day. Okay, so these things all show in his spirit that Esau Edom is indeed the so-called white man that's in the earth. Okay, presumptuous, doing too much, having no limits, no chill with his wickedness and his violence, all right, insolence, okay, just all kinds of rude and disrespectful behavior throughout the four corners of the earth, especially against Yahweh Shema Shai, right, just being complete assholes throughout the earth, and having no remorse for it, okay. So it's now more than ever that Yahweh Shema Shai just put a stop to this damn devil. Okay, or else what? No flesh should be saved. Okay, verse 17 it says, also Edom shall be a desolation. Every one that goeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss at all the plagues thereof. Okay, verse 18, as in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord Yahweh, no man shall abide there, neither shall a son of man dwell in it. All right, so the prophecies likens the destruction and judgment of Esau, Edom, to the destruction and judgment that the Lord brought upon ancient Sodom and Gomorrah, which is what? Raining down fire and brimstone from the heavens. Okay, now of course, did the actual physical land of Esau, Edom face that type of judgment? Of course not. Okay, but Babylon the Great is said according to prophecy to face this same type of judgment. Okay, the same judgment that the Lord brought upon ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. All right, and when you go to the cross reference for verse 18, okay, notice the very first scripture that comes up is Jeremiah 50 and verse 40, which Jeremiah chapters 50 and chapter 51 speaks to what? Judgment upon Babylon, which when you read throughout those chapters thoroughly is ultimately talking about Babylon the Great. Okay, the Babylon that will be ruling in these outer days. Okay, not the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire, because the Neo-Babylonian Empire was not destroyed in the same fashion as Sodom and Gomorrah. All right, in a form of fire and brimstone. Because clearly, when you look at the region where ancient Babylon ruled at, which is the region of Iraq, clearly there's people still living in that land to this very day. Okay, but as it says right here in Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 40, it says, as Yahweh overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. So the fact that, okay, because pretty much it's showing you right here in these two verses, all right, Jeremiah 49 verse 18 and Jeremiah 50 verse 40, that the judgment associated upon Babylon the Great is also the judgment tied to Esau, Edom, okay, the so-called white man. All right, showing you that Esau, Edom rules over Babylon the Great in these outer days. Okay, and it says, verse 19, Jeremiah 49 verse 19, behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan against the habitation of the strong. Okay, and who's that talking about? Yahweh Shai. And the scriptures liken Yahweh Shai in Revelation 5 to the lion of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so also Esau, Edom's judgment is also tied to the return of Yahweh Shai. Okay, and we can also, of course, go to Isaiah 63 to also showcase how Yahweh Shai is, when he comes back, is going to bring judgment upon Esau, Edom. Okay, who is this man that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Bozrah, as it says in Isaiah 63 and 1. Okay, showing you as well that Bozrah is associated with end time judgment, end time prophecy. It says, Jeremiah 49:19 again, behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan against the habitation of the strong. All right, what is the habitation of the strong? Esau, Edom here in Babylon the Great. It says, but I will suddenly make him run away from her. And who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, and who will appoint me the time? And who is that shepherd that will stand before me? All right, and let's read 19 in the NLT. It says, I will come like a lion from the thickets of the Jordan, leaping on the sheep in the pasture. I will chase Edom from his land, and I will appoint the leader of my choice. Okay, and who's the leader that Yahweh is getting ready to appoint? Yahweh Shai, his begotten son. Okay, like it says in Psalms the 2nd chapter, where the Most High said, I will set my son upon the holy hill of Zion, roughly paraphrasing it. Okay, that's Yahweh Shai. And it says, for who is like me, and who can challenge me? What ruler can oppose my will? And you see, Esau, Edom has that complex in his latter days via this beast system. And like it speaks of in Revelation 13, who is like the beast, and who shall make war with her? Well, hey, who is like Yahweh Shema Shai, and who shall make war with Yahweh Shema Shai? Okay, And the Lord's getting ready to make his name magnified in the earth, and his begotten son's name magnified throughout the earth, upon the judgment and destruction of Babylon the Great, and the judgment of Esau, Edom. Okay? It says, verse 20, therefore hear the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purpose against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolation, so like a desolate with them. Man, that's what we see as well going on these outer days. The least of the flock, which are the small hats, okay, Amalek, drawing America, Babylon the Great, to war with Iran, which is ultimately going to lead to what? Russia, along with China, getting involved, okay, who supports Iran. And then that's ultimately going to spark what? World War III, okay, nuclear war, okay, which is all going to lead to the destruction and judgment upon Babylon the Great, and the judgment upon Esau, Edom, okay, nuclear war, nuclear fire, as well as the return of Yahweh Shai in the midst of World War III. It says, verse 21, the earth is moved at the noise of their fall, at the cry of the noise thereof heard in the Red Sea. Yeah, hey, the earth is going to move at the fall of Esau, Edom, and Babylon the Great. Okay, and even as it speaks of in Isaiah 24, talks about how the earth is going to reel to and fro like a drunkard at the destruction of Babylon. Okay, the city of confusion. All right, and it's all going to do what? Okay, magnify the name of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai throughout the earth, just as the name of the Lord was magnified throughout the earth when the Lord took down Pharaoh and the Egyptians. You see that? It says, verse 22, behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle. It's talking about the return of Yahweh Shai. Okay? It says, and spread his wings over Basra, America, and at that day shall the heart of the mighty men of Edom be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. Yeah, talking about the return of Yahweh Shai and the angels waging war against the armies of Esau, Edom, and the heathen nations. Okay, and as it speaks of in 2 13, talks about how when Yahweh Shai makes war against the heathen nations and their armies, it talks about how they're going to be in great fear, but yet durst fight. Okay, the Lord's going to harden up their hearts one more time for the purpose of what? Destruction. Just like the Lord has hardened up the heart of Esau, Edom's heart one more time in his pride for the purpose of what? Destruction. Okay, for the purpose of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai showing his power upon Esau, Edom. All right. So, Lord willing, this video is edifying. All right, because I got to roll. So, until next time, Lord willing, Shalom.